Hello, cooking enthusiasts. This week's video should be a pretty quick update. I'm going to go over some exciting Koji related projects that are both beginning and ending. First, let's go over some new projects. A few weeks ago, I made a batch of Barley Terauchi, which was actually my first time working with barley, since I normally just use rice. The barley was soaked overnight and then just steamed in batches. In some of the photos, it looks quite green, but that is just something with the lighting. I usually leave rice slightly chewy and undercooked for koji compared to what I would use when actually eating the rice, but I think I may have undercooked the barley a little bit too much. I was using my standard sous vide incubation setup that I do for all of my koji projects. I will put a link for that in the video description. Temperature was set for 33 Celsius and no humidity control, just sort of monitoring it. 2 turnings a day, and it took a solid 48 hours. Again, because of the aforementioned undercooking, I didn't get a ton of really big visible koji growth, but the aromas coming off it were very promising, so I continued. The first major project was a much bigger batch of my koji and roasted squash vinegar. Normally, with a lot of projects, I like to measure things relatively precisely, but for this one, I was just working with what I had. So this was a bunch of spaghetti squash that got roasted in the oven, combined with a roughly equal amount of barley koji and enough water to cover everything. I also added the previous small batch of koji squash vinegar. I also added a big piece of kombucha mother to begin the fermentation into alcohol and eventually vinegar. My hope is to make a batch of this koji squash vinegar every few months and start collecting it and aging it in a barrel, almost going for a very simplified balsamico technique. Next, let's talk about my first attempt at a koji-based amino sauce slash garum, which is based on the beef garum recipe from the Noma Guide to Fermentation. Specifically, I was using the Eye of Round from the Almost Veal, the grass-fed cow that I bought into for my dry aging projects. Pretty much the only difference from their recipe is that I seared the outside of the piece of beef before grinding it up. I also used a slightly higher ratio of the barley koji because, again, my initial fermentation didn't go perfectly, and I'll probably give this project a good 6 months of aging. Some leftover barley koji went into the freezer, and I've already turned some of that into impromptu roasted chanterelle miso, so that should be interesting in a few months. Finally, let's talk about some projects that are now completed. All the way back 6 months ago, I made two types of miso. One of them was sour cream and onion potato chip miso. So, rice koji, sour cream and onion potato chips, a little bit of sour cream powder, and fresh green onions. After aging, the fermented dairy combined with the onions results in a real blue cheese flavor, so that's pretty exciting. And finally, I get to talk about my burnt bread miso, which may actually be my favorite koji project to date. Once again, this was based on a recipe from the Noma Guide to Fermentation, where you grow koji directly onto pieces of bread. I did that, but my bread was either toasted or 20% of it was actually burned. I also had some extra rice koji laying around that ended up into the mixture. I was just going to age this for 3 months, but I'm glad I left it for 6 months. The results are really amazing. It tastes like really good soy sauce mixed with a dark caramel and even notes of like prunes and raisins. So I'm really excited to start cooking with it. But that is pretty much it for the Koji projects. If you have any questions about this, please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, thank you for watching.